Sri, do not worry about the interview. Focus on your foundations. Focus on your fundamentals, on think how they are actually working. That would eventually help you a lot. Hello, hello. Am I audible and visible? Only focus on foundations, Sri. Focus on foundations. Am I audible and visible? No. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Uh, yes, we'll wait for five more minutes. Then we'll start our session. Good evening. Okay, Golden Boy Nani, you're stuck in payment gateways and handling the database. Okay, Golden Boy. Okay. Is my voice very low or audible? So, shall we start our session? So, before starting the session, I just want everyone, can you just give me a summarization of what happened yesterday? Yes, my life. We are actually building a full stack project in this React sprint where the complete front end part will be done in this particular React sprint, and the back end part will be done in the Node.js sprint. Okay, DOM, apart from DOM, what we have observed? Okay, what is meant by reconciliation? Okay, how many of you actually finished this, the assignment part that I have given to write a better reconciler? And I've told you what are the ways of writing the better reconciler. AI customs, there'll be much not problem of learning, the missing the previous sessions, but it is giving a solid foundation of why we need React. So yes, Nisi, yes, state. We saw about state, we saw about reconciliation, we saw about what is meant by component and other stuff. Again, in this given session, let's try to focus on this given particular thing. Okay, I'm just adjusting my the comment thing, so I'm just reading everything. So virtual DOM, Lakshma Reddy, we haven't seen the virtual DOM yet. Virtual DOM though we haven't seen yet. Uh, yes. Okay, don't worry about Tejas. Don't worry about your problem. It's just it's just a simple thing. Practice more number of problems. You will see more number of ways to get a problem done. So that is one effective way we can take that approach so that we can solve any kind of an question. It just depends upon the practice. Do not worry much about it. Um, um, yeah. So yes, Devendra. Yes, correct. AI customs. We have learned about how the front end used to be there before 2014. Where because before 2014, front end is actually more of JavaScript oriented, not more of framework oriented like React or Vue or Angular. So at that point of time, what are the things that are actually followed, or what are the practices that are actually followed in the front end arena to make dynamic websites? And also we discussed about the difference between dynamic website and a static website. So how this dynamic websites needs to be dealt, because content nowadays actually fed dynamically onto this web page itself. So at that point of time, the major agenda or major point is how can we manage the HTML itself. That's a crucial point. But how to manage them is using this through the point of JavaScript variable itself. So how that thing has been done and how it has been entirely taken care by are the things that we have seen in the previous session. Now, let's try to have our introduction more deeper into the part of React. So, shall we start? Tell me if you want me to start. Tell me, go ahead in the chat. So, yeah. If you want me to go ahead, tell me go ahead. I'll go ahead. Tell me go ahead. Go ahead. Fine. 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 So this is an introductory session. AI customs, do not worry about whether you have missed the previous session or not. Previous session is just nothing but how it used to be previous in the previous era of React. How the front end used to be in the previous React days. So that's what we have discussed in the yesterday's session. So yeah, that's it. Not more than that. Yeah. So we'll go ahead. So for that, I'll say so now here we are desktop. So now I'm currently on my desktop. So yeah, currently I'm on my desktop where I'll say that I'll create one folder which is I can say that NKDIR something known as React. So I'll move into that folder, clear. I'll move to that React folder, and inside that folder I'll create this first session, intro to React. This is actually the first session of this day. So I'll be actually creating that folder. And one important thing I just want to mention everything from now from this class is that every time that we write code itself in the the code which we write in this given particular the sprint, I'll be actually posting that entire sprint into this GitHub, and I'll be sharing the GitHub link with you by the end of the class. By the end of the class, I'll be doing that. So once after I'll be including all of this content into this GitHub, uploading all the content into the GitHub and getting the GitHub repo link and giving to you. You just can refer all those code that what we have written. Is that clear? Is that okay? Is that okay? If it's okay of me sending the GitHub repo link, then we can go ahead. Okay, fine, go ahead. So I'll go into that thing. So in this given thing, I'll say that I'll create these files. Let's say I'll say index.html. I'll say index.html is one such a file where we have these, one HTML file. For that, I need to open them in the VS Code. So I'll be opening them in the VS Code itself. Yes, this is our VS Code. And also I just want to say get init. Now clear. I'll say get status. No problem. We'll say yes. Exit. So yeah, I'll open this file. I'll say we'll write this particular thing known as HTML there. So we'll say we'll document or name this given particular document as intro to React. Intro to React. First, we'll try to understand. Let's try to understand what is React. Wait a minute. What is React? Because yesterday we have seen this one important question, which is nothing but what exactly is meant by this one particular thing. The pre-days or pre-era days of the front end before the React, but now we'll see what is meant by React and how it actually deals with different lot of things. We will learn them all together at once. So give me a minute. I'll just once connect my charger and I'll be back. So Yes, I think I'm done with my charger connection. I hope I'm done with my charger connection. So wait. Yes, now everything is fine. Now everything is fine. Okay, now, yeah. Now let's try to understand. Um, am I audible and visible properly? Ramakrishna, this is one important thing I just want to tell you is like we are not gone sidetrack. Because without understanding why the React has been in the given first place itself, and you're trying to be a React developer, it's kind of you know, a bad way of learning the React. So, whatever you are learning about the things, because there is this one given website, I'll tell you this reason why why I'm actually telling the kind of a thing. So, let's say for this given thing, there is this one thing known as front end masters. There is this given website, it loaded very quickly, right? So, this given website, even as I use it to build something or to learn something only about this front end thing, not only front end but different technologies that are related to more towards the thing of JavaScript and Golang. JavaScript and Golang, this is the best, in the world, best in the world to, learn the front end engineering. Okay. In that given particular website, top 1% front end engineers around the world will come and will record the sessions for different technologies, React, Node, Vue, Angular, Next.js, any kind of a thing. They actually record those things. And you know what? That given particular website, Front-End Masters, was built without using React. Without using React. In one of the interviews, the interviewer asked me, tell me whether this given website is built using a framework like Angular or like a library like React, or is it built only using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. After seeing its performance, after seeing its the way it is uploading, after seeing the way it is optimized, I thought of like they have definitely used a framework to build this entire website. But I am wrong. The interviewer told me that, the interviewer actually told me that you are wrong. The entire website is actually built only using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and there is nothing kind of a framework or library that has been used. And he just told me, see, you're thinking React is also a fast way of developing the things, but React has its own loop. It can best using React we can do a lot of things, easier things, but as we build the complex website, you will see the complexity of the React. You will see the disadvantages of React, right? So these are the things that you need to understand before becoming a React developer. Without understanding this particular thing of JavaScript, that there is this one joke in this particular IT domain, which is nothing but people who are applying for the React developers or React developer position, majority of them doesn't know JavaScript. That's actually a joke. Senior interviewers or senior hiring managers, senior hiring engineers will actually take it as a joke. They'll say he's a React developer, which is nothing but they are actually mocking you, which is nothing but they are telling that yes, this boy knows React, but he doesn't know JavaScript. It is like you are building a home, but without foundation, you are actually building the home. So that is why it is very much important to understand why JavaScript used to do or previously before the React era and how the React has replaced few advantages this entire front end arena. Yes, that's what they have done only using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, new scientist. Now, that comes to this Manikanta, that comes under this particular, not looking at this performance itself, because we can actually make this React applications, the Next.js application, Vue applications more performant. There are some other techniques of writing, some designing principles and sort of thing. We can make your entire web page a bit more performant. But in order to gauge whether this given website is actually built using a framework or not by using only HTML, CSS, JavaScript, it takes a lot of a skill to identify the things. So at this point of time, if I just talk about it, it just takes around 3 to 4 hours to just explain that one single thing. So it just comes up with the skill level that you have. That's the simple thing. I can just keep it forward. Now let's try to understand what exactly is meant by React. So let's try to go to this one particular website, or where I can say where I have I'll say that this given particular thing. I'll open the Chrome. I'll say React. Let's go to this React page itself. We have this react.dev, where we have all these things, light shade, okay, this thing, community, learn. Whenever I'm clicking this something, there is no reloading, which is nothing but whenever I'm given particular. Let's say I'll tell you the difference between Amazon application, Amazon.in. Let's try to open it. Okay, Amazon.in. Let's say down this thing, I like this given particular bike. If I select it, you will see this entire page is getting reloaded and just showing up it onto the screen. But coming to this React, let's say if I want to click this given learn, you see that this particular change, the transition from one given page to another given page, it's not like reloading entire altogether different page. We are actually changing this particular reloadation into updating the states. So that is one simple difference that I just want to give you before telling what is meant by React. Is that if you observe this Amazon website, whenever if I click something, entire new page is actually loading. Even if I go back, click on it, you'll see this entire new page is getting loaded. So Amazon is one such a website that is actually or heavily inspired with this Angular framework. To their front end, Amazon heavily inspired towards this thing known as Angular framework. But coming to this React, I'm on this React web page. Let's say if I go back, all of a sudden there is no reloading of the page. Altogether there is no reloading of the page onto this React website itself. So this is the functionality of the React, which is nothing but it tries to be a single page application. Now let's try to understand what does this React actually achieve. Then we'll understand what does this React actually do. So I can say that yeah, I'll say that what does the React actually achieves? What does this actually achieves? So the first point is it reduces the usage of costs for DOM operation, because operations as DOM operations are costly, because as we have seen in the previous session, in order to dynamically load the content onto the screen, it actually takes a lot of parameters that drains back your computer resources. So that is why DOM operations are actually costly. And second important thing is it tries to build a SPA, which is nothing but single page application. Which is nothing but, let's try to understand what is meant by single page application, SPA. So single page application is nothing but, we don't want to reload or re-upload another HTML when navigating, which is nothing but, like as you see in this given example of Amazon. Let's say if I am currently on this given price or given thing, if I click on this particular thing, you'll see I am actually reloading this entire page. Right? I'm actually reloading this entire page. But coming to this React, if I just click on this React, you see that this is a single page application, where in this given single page, entire state has been modified in such a way that the content is actually dynamically uploaded onto the screen. So that is what meant. That is what meant by this single page application. Now coming back to this thing, where I want to tell one important thing is nothing but document which we have used in DOM operations. is actually given by the environment of JS, which is nothing but here the environments of the JS are nothing but the browser and Node.js. So this document is actually given by this API known as document API. This is actually provided by this thing known as a document API by the browser or by the environment itself. Now coming back to understanding this thing, this document API is the least, or I can say is the second least or third least API that is used. Whereas React on other hand, right. Yes, I'll come to that point thoroughly. I'll come to that point. Yes, React on other hand uses there is another API. I think its name is History API. History API in order to modify the things. So I don't remember this exact API name, how the React actually uses, but as far as I still remember till this point, it is actually known as History API. Maybe I might be wrong. I need to check it because it's been so long time I have used this given particular APIs regarding this React. But any which way, you can check upon this one thing, which API that React actually uses to update a whole lot of things. So that's the React. Now let's try to see what is actually meant by React. So go to this installation where we have this given particular code. How to add React to an existing project. So till this point you might have learned about these two things, which is nothing but this one single thing. What is that thing? This create React app, which is nothing but npx create React app, and also you'll see the white, etc. So in this given session we are not going to use both of them. Let's try to understand the bare bone React structure and what it helps us to build as a developer, because it actually reduces half of the work of developer. So we'll try to understand how this React is one such a library that helps us to reduce the work of developer, half of their burden. So for that we have this React thing. Let's try to include this React. So we have this particular thing known as npm thing. At this point of time we are not going to use that npm kind of a thing. Instead I'll say cdn. Okay, it is like React CDN. Yes, CDN links. We are going to include these CDN links all together. So there are two links. Remember, there are two links. One is of React 18 version, another one is of React DOM 18 version. Now let's try to include these both links in our code itself. So I'll do that thing of including in the code itself. So yeah. Instead I'll paste it here. So I have included two important links which are nothing but the CDN links. So CDN is nothing but content delivery network. So we have included React using this CDN links, where you can clearly see, observe, these are the two different links. Now coming to this React, it has two links. One link is actually for React and other one is React DOM. So what is that exact difference between React and React DOM? Let's try to figure out. Which is nothing but React is an algorithm that modifies UI. Remember, I am telling you, React is an algorithm, simple algorithm that actually modifies your user interface. right? But I'm not telling that this actually React is actually modifying the DOM itself. There is this difference. Try to observe this difference. I'm actually telling that React is one such an algorithm where it modifies the user interface, but I'm not telling that this is an algorithm that modifies the DOM itself. Both are different. Be very careful when you choose your words. Be very careful when you choose your words, because to modify UI, React chooses a very complex way of dealing things, because it doesn't hamper the performance. At the same time, it doesn't go for the costly operations of DOM manipulation, but it strikes a balance, beautiful balance in between both of them, where this algorithm modifies the UI part, user interface part, doesn't completely deal with the DOM part. It intelligently deal with the DOM operations or DOM manipulation. So that's why React is kind of an algorithm that modifies this UI part. Coming to this React DOM. So React DOM is support for React algorithm. So what kind of support it offers, why it offers, we'll see it in few days. But let's try to understand at this given point, React is one such an algorithm that helps us to modify this entire UI part, the user interface of any given website. But coming to the second part of React DOM is kind of a support system for this React algorithm to perform very much better. So this is the difference between React and React DOM. So till this point, anyone has any kind of a doubt? Modifying DOM, as we have seen in yesterday's session, modifying UI itself, you're going to see in the React itself. So you're going to see how this entire thing has been modified. Not exactly new scientist. React DOM doesn't directly deal with this DOM manipulation. React itself, because see, DOM operations are very much costly operations. React DOM doesn't directly hit onto it. It has a very intelligent way of striking the balance to handle the DOM manipulation. That's actually dealt with virtual DOM concept, where virtual DOM is altogether a different concept. At this point of time, do not worry about it. But let's try to understand this DOM or React DOM is actually nothing but a support for this React algorithm, where this React algorithm actually manages to change your UI itself, modify your UI itself. That's the thing I just want to mention. Anyone, any kind of doubt till this point? Yes, Busa Tarni, you are asking that if it's a single page application, how it can make multiple changes in the single web page. That's the, speciality of the React that achieved. So you will see how it is doing. You will see. Don't worry about it. You will see. You will see. Whether it actually take a lot of skill to identify whether it is actually built using this particular framework or the normal, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So at this point of time, leave it. At this point of time, leave it. So there are a lot of layers to understand how the framework actually behaves and how the normal thing actually behaves. So if you are capable of understanding all of these things, then yes, you can find it out whether this given application is actually built using framework or not. Acha, Bhusataran, it is nothing but React is simply an algorithm. React is simply an algorithm that is created by the Facebook developers. So there is this one thing, wait a minute, I'll open this YouTube. Wait, we'll go and search for this particular thing. So React documentary, I'll say documentary, this particular documentary, yes, this particular documentary is very interesting documentary. I urge everyone to just copy this thing. I'll paste it in the chat. I just want everyone to check out this given particular documentary, where in this given documentary, all the React people who actually created the library React itself has gathered together, shared their experiences, why they have created React, what made them to create React, what are the challenges that they have faced, and how it has, took a shape after creating the React, and how it made impact on the front end space of the entire industry. That's very interesting to see these kind of things. AI Customs, front end masters is actually per month we need to pay 4,000 or 5,000. That's actually a subscription thing, kind of. Now coming to this, Taruni, React is nothing but a simple algorithm which modifies your user interface, But for that, in order to modify those things, we require a support. That support is actually given by this thing known as a React, DOM. That actually given by the React DOM. Hussein Khan, yes, we can do it, but the one important thing is Angular has a very structured way of approach, a very clear structured way of approach Angular had. So we can achieve those kind of things, but React itself has its by default algorithm manifesting all these simple things using this thing known as a state. So state and component and how it has been structured, it's altogether, or the base of React itself helps us to create single page applications. That's what I just want to mention. Depends on the project, Pawan. React sometimes might be heavier than Angular, but it also depends upon the project. So till this point, if anyone have any kind of a doubt, you can ask me. Otherwise, if you tell me, sir, you can go ahead, we can go ahead. Yes, yes, you can give. You can tell Sanjay. So one important thing I just want to mention is that um, I just want to mention one important thing, which is actually this one single thing, which is let's say try to attend all of the sessions in this given sprint. Try to understand how the React is internally operating the things, because I want to discuss almost all each and every small nitty-gritty details about the React, such that it will be very helpful for you. Because in the interview, if I actually speak about these nitty-gritty details, if you pinpoint that this actually happens, this is the background thing that actually happens for this given thing, then 90% you are done with the selection. You are done with the selection. Yes, new scientist, Amazon has different kind of selections, but if you try to create this kind of e-commerce application by the React itself, you'll see the difference. You'll see the difference. Don't worry about it. So yeah, yes, we'll go ahead. Now, let's say um, we got our CDN links. Now let's try to understand what exactly is actually present inside this given particular thing known as, or else I'll create one JavaScript file. Wait a minute. I'll create index.js file, where in this given file, I'll say console.or else, instead of creating the index.javascript file, I'll just say create a script file itself inside the body. I'll create a h1 element. Welcome to intro of React, where I also will say in between the script tag, I'll just say that console.log of React. Let's try to see what is the thing that we are actually getting. So for this, I'll click go live. Now I'll go to this thing known as inspect, go to the console. So React is not defined. Okay, it is saying okay, fine. So let's try to include this one single thing into this given web page itself. So yes, this React. Yes. If you observe this, whenever I try to zoom it a bit, if you observe this React itself has some other things. Let's try to understand this thing. React, all this has children, component, fragment, different thing, like even it has use effect, you know uh, use callback, use context, use reducer, use state. This is one of these functions that is actually given by the React itself. And we also have this one important thing. This is actually a funny thing. There is actually a funny story behind this particular one such a function known as secret internals do not use or you will be fired. This is actually very interesting function, or a very interesting, I can say that property does that our React object have. So apart from this, we have many other kinds, or these are the things that are actually produced by this React or taken care by this React. Similarly, if I say this thing, what is actually present? React DOM. I'll say DOM. If I see in order to see, yes. So these are the different things that are actually present inside this React DOM itself, where it has this find DOM node, create root. Remember create root. I'll tell you why we create root and sort of a thing. So do not worry about it. So it has many other thing, properties, many other functions. Even it has the render function, render method itself. So let's try to go to this given particular links altogether. Let's try to find out what is exactly present in between in the given links. So I'll copy this entire link. I'll copy it. And I'll say run the code. Now if you can clearly see, these are the things that are exactly present inside this given React, this given particular link, this given particular CDN link. Even if you observe, this is entirely a JavaScript code. So I can simply say that I'll just copy it. I'll just go back to this given particular thing and I'll create, instead of naming it as index.js, I'll rename it. I'll name it as react.js. And inside this given react.js, I'll actually paste this entire code. I'll actually paste this entire JavaScript code. So even React is nothing but a complete JavaScript code. Okay, this is a big code. Now let's say first, let's try to see this. This is your entire React code. This is entire React code, that React library that has been built by the Facebook developers, where we use the same library to build entire components of UI. Similarly, let's try to see what are the things that are actually present inside this React DOM thing itself. React DOM, paste it. Even this is also a JavaScript code, right? So I'll do one thing. I'll copy it and I'll say I'll create new file and I'll say, oh wait a minute, React DOM.js. Oh, fine. We kind of it out. No. Yes. I'll create a file. I'll say React DOM.js. Paste this entire React DOM code. React DOM code. If you observe, this code will be actually a bit bigger, larger than this particular thing known as React code. But at this point of time, do not worry. So this React DOM code actually is bigger than this given particular React.js code altogether. So this code is 3343. This React DOM actually having this 29,924 lines of JavaScript code, while this React.js having only this 3343 lines of code, only JavaScript code. So now yes, let's say we all now are at this given point of time where we have seen this React, or what are the functions that is, or what are the properties, functions or methods that is React is giving, and both React DOM are giving, right? Do not worry at this point of time what we are doing, but let's try to say or try to see that, as we all know, or we have seen that React focuses on creating the SPA or single page applications, right? Single page application is nothing but the HTML will not constantly change. New HTML will not be getting into the browser itself. So there should be only one single HTML where inside that HTML the state has to be changed, which is nothing but there will be one single div element. There will be one single div element where with this given element, or with this thing known as a root ID, where if you observe entire code, where this entire code will actually present in between this given div, in between these given div. So as a part of a single page application, the major thing or the major first important point is every HTML, the entire HTML code should be present inside one single container, and that single container will have this ID which is actually known as root. So that's why I have created a div element with this ID known as root. Now let's try to understand how this entire thing actually work. Sorry, I have removed it. Now let's say we have this one single element where we can tell about this one thing. Let's try to understand this particular thing, or else we'll write a comment on it. Wait a minute. Where I'll say this, uh, whole application lives inside the below div root. So this is one thing I just want to mention. And coming to this thing, I have wrote down a list of elements which I want to teach. So I'm just checking that list. Now let's say thing where I just want to tell this one given definition. First I'll tell or start with this given one single definition, and I'll say this one single thing, which is nothing but in the previous session we have seen, or else I'll go in this one. In the previous session we have seen there is this one reconciler function where it is actually capable of modifying our entire UI itself, right? One single function, create DOM element. If you observe or if you remember this previous session where I have written one JavaScript function, and that JavaScript function is actually responsible to create, or that reconciler is one such a function that is actually responsible to modify or update the content on the screen itself. So for that, or for in that case where we have we write this one particular thing, hello, one function known as, where this function actually returns, let's say, some HTML thing. So for it, let's say welcome to the React. Sorry. Now this function hello actually returns this one particular HTML element. So do not worry about how this JavaScript actually returning this HTML element altogether at this first initial phase, but try to understand even in the previous session, yesterday's session, we are actually manipulating this DOM or updating content on the screen itself using this one single function. So similarly, I am actually including this one single h1 element into this particular React, into the web page itself. So for that, I have created one JavaScript function where it is responsible to return some HTML element, and now this HTML element should be present on this given screen. Should be present on this given screen below this thing is welcome intro to React. So I'll remove this particular h1 here. I'll remove this h1 here. So yes, now where we have one function, reconciler function, where it can return a HTML code. Now for that, I can say React DOM, because whenever I want to include this given particular return HTML element into this particular I can say that output itself or on the screen itself, I'll say that React DOM.render. As we have seen, this React DOM actually gives this method known as render, where this render to modify the things, or it helps us to render the things on the screen itself, where this syntax, or else first I'll write the syntax itself. Okay, so it is in JavaScript, so wait. And JavaScript has their own advantage. Learning React and Angular has their own advantages. But let's try to understand this React first, then we can go ahead for Angular at next point. So yes, whenever I finish writing this given particular thing, this given component itself will be rendered inside this root element, which is nothing but, if you observe the code, okay, wait a minute. Okay, I think I need to include this component in this given particular way, where it say hello. Yes. So why it is not rendering? Div element with div root. Let's check this console log thing whether we did any kind of a mistake. Inside the body, we have our div element. Okay, console. Okay, index HTML 28. Where we are actually trying to include this given one single thing. Let's see. Okay. Let's try to create this, hello with capital letters. Maybe that might be the fault I have did. Hello and this HELLO. Okay. So instead of doing this particular thing, yes, it is correct. We are actually doing this entire thing correct. Or okay, even one single thing. Okay, I forget to add this one thing known as Babel. So Babel, where this is, don't worry about what I'm including this Babel thing. So I'll say Babel CDN. Babel standalone installation. I'll include the script into the code itself. So yes. So I'll say script type is actually text/table. Now let's try to save the code. Try to see whether this thing is on this. Now this particular. So if you observe this, if you observe this given particular set of code, where we are actually generating some particular HTML out of a JavaScript function and calling this particular function as an component, and using this same particular component in this given particular React DOM.render method as an HTML tag itself, right? So this is the one important thing that we have observed or we did. Whenever we do this kind of things, this component has been actually rendered with the help of this render method. This component, hello component, is actually being rendered, and we can clearly see that this is the output. This is the output where we are trying to include this given particular component hello inside this root or element with ID root, which is nothing but in this given div. If you observe in this given div, we don't have any other component or we don't have any other content that is actually included. But if you observe here, go to inspect, go to console. Sorry, React DOM is no longer supported. It's kind of a warning. It's fine. No problem. Go to then this thing where you have this div ID, and inside that we have our h1 element. Welcome to React. So this React DOM is actually helping us to render this given particular components, into this given particular element, right? So This is the use of this React. Now coming to this important point of what exactly is meant by component itself. So for that I can say this one single definition, which is nothing but yeah, I'll write the code here itself. I'll write the code here itself. I'll say this component is nothing but these are independent. I can say these are independent and also reusable bits of code component where they serve the same purpose of JavaScript functions, but work in isolation and return HTML. So this is what meant by component, where these are reusable code snippet. They work similarly as JavaScript functions, but they return this HTML. This is what meant by HTML. So component. Now let's try to understand what are the languages that browser actually understand. Browser actually understand HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But in this given language, we actually mixed two things: JavaScript and HTML. So this structure is actually known as JSX. Where this JSX is one such a component where JSX is nothing but JavaScript plus XML, which is nothing but XML or JavaScript is where we create variables to perform certain kind of actions, certain kind of things is the JavaScript thing. Coming to this XML, where we can create any kind of an, it used to generate this HTML itself. So this XML and even this JS are combinedly together known as JSX. Even in this given particular code, I have written in this form of JSX, where this inside this JavaScript function, we're actually returning something known as a HTML element. That's what we are doing, but browser cannot understand it. Which is nothing but, to understand this JSX, browser needs a translator who converts JSX into JavaScript and HTML. So for that we have this thing known as a Babel, is that translator. If you observe this thing, I have included a CDN link where I'll mention it here, CDN link of Babel, where this Babel is actually helpful or responsible for to convert this entire JSX code into normal HTML and JavaScript. And also I have written this script of type text and Babel. Whenever this particular browser actually reads this given particular code that is present inside the script tag, it thinks that it takes the help of Babel, where Babel we have linked using this CDN links. Right? So till this point, anyone has kind of any doubt regarding what is meant by component, what is the React, how this React DOM render actually renders all the content onto the screen, and what is the difference between JavaScript and the JSX? If anyone have any kind of doubt, please ask. XML is kind of an advanced version of HTML where we can create autonomous tags in HTML. HTML has some standard tags, but XML is more of gives free hand to the developer to create automatic, your own tags. That's one of the very crucial part of this XML. So yes, so JavaScript and XML will combinedly convert it as JSX. JSX is kind of a new syntax. But one important thing, is it really necessary to create React apps only using JSX syntax? Not exactly. Even you can write only JavaScript code in React, it works fine. But JSX is for developers usage because it helps us, it makes developers life easy. That's why we are using. Simple. No, HTML is not created using XML. So Tarani, without actually including this React, without actually using this React, I've just explained what is meant by component, the functional way of, the basic way of using a JavaScript function to return HTML. To return HTML, this is what the React actually follows. So the one important thing when we are dealing with a dynamic website is we use this JavaScript variables and functions to actually generate the HTML itself. So for that, we are using this particular thing known as a JavaScript function where it is written in HTML content. So browser cannot understand this syntax which is known as JSX. So that's why I have used a translator known as Babel. That's why I have used a translator known as Babel using the CDN link, and this Babel will separate this entire JavaScript function and this separate HTML and will give both simultaneously to this particular browser itself. Now browser can understand both HTML and JavaScript, so it can do its own work. That's what I have did. Where this returned h1 element is rendered onto the screen by this render function which is given by the React DOM itself. React DOM we have included above. React DOM. This is React DOM. So that's why we have this thing known as React DOM here. Let's say if I say instead of having this React DOM and this giving thing return thing, I'll say welcome to the second day of sprint. You'll see the second day of sprint. It is actually included inside this root element. Because the React DOM with render function is actually rendering this given particular component altogether into this particular root element ID. Element with root ID value root, this particular element. It is actually including this given content, all the given content into this one single root element or into this one single element div element. So this DOM actually or this render actually take care of including this given content inside this particular root operator. I can say root element itself. That's what we have did. Yes, it is an advanced version of HTML. Yes. Not exactly, it is a JavaScript translator. It's not a JavaScript compiler itself. Yes, but React actually uses the Babel. So till this point, any kind of doubts? If no doubts, tell me, you can go ahead. I'll go ahead. Yes, I'll come to that, Chandu. I'll come to that thing. One important thing is whenever you are naming any component, we use this capital letters, all capital letters. all capital letters. That's a mandatory thing. That's a mandatory thing when we name the conventions. Name any component. That's a convention. That's a practice. We have to do it. Acha Supriya, what is meant by difference? What is difference? Pascal case, if we have multiple words altogether. Pascal case is for JavaScript, not for the JSX part. Yes, first letter capital is necessary. Even some people I've seen, uh, it's kind of their choice. Some people actually use all capital letters. Some people actually use first letter capital and remaining letters small. It's their choice, but both are the conventions. You can follow either of them. As a Babel, what is the difference between Babel and transparent? It's kind of a similar on one such a level. On any given such a level, they are actually similar, where they divide this HTML code and JavaScript code from JSX and separately give HTML code and JavaScript code to the browser itself, so that the browser actually understands this given particular HTML and JavaScript and perform the actions. So Babel is kind of a transpiler, translator, similar. Um, Done. If this is done, tell me go ahead. I'll go ahead. If you have any doubt, I'll explain it. And one important thing is JSX. JSX. I need to explain this one point. Third point, JSX is inspired from the template literals of JavaScript. Template literals, which is called backticks. Backticks. Let's say if I want to include any kind of a small thing. Let's say if I want to include, let's say in this given JavaScript code itself, I'll say inside this given function, let name is actually equals to NxtWave. NxtWave. Name is actually equals to, okay. If I want to include this given particular name variable inside this particular HTML element, I'll simply use these two braces. I'll simply use these two braces, right? I'll simply use these two braces. Let's say, for the sake of our understanding, I'll write this entire, or I'll rewrite this entire above code in this given particular format, where I'll say written this particular thing, where I can say I'll say h1, I'll say welcome to the second day of sprint, sprint by NxtWave. So in this thing, if you observe and try to see, you'll see this entire code has been included. Where this entire thing, where this entire h1 element is actually printed onto the screen itself, right? So at this given point of time, let's say whenever we want to include any kind of an variable into this given particular thing, here this is actually known as JS code. Here we are actually returning this JS code itself. we are actually returning this JS code itself. Wait a minute. Yes, we're actually returning JS code itself. I mean, this is actually returning this JS code. So this is JS syntax. But if you have observed it, this above thing, where we are actually including these variables in the HTML using this simple braces, curly braces, using simply curly braces. So this is actually known as JSX format. JSX format. If you observe, when we are trying to include a simple variable like this name into either HTML element or this JavaScript, we are actually using this braces. We are actually using this braces, right? So similarly, the same kind of context is also happening in the JSX also. In this given JSX format, we are actually trying to include a simple JavaScript variable. This is actually a JS variable, JavaScript variable. We are trying to include this simple name JavaScript variable into this HTML element with this thing known as a flower braces. So this has been implemented after seeing this implementation of this code, after implementation of this particular code. So I can say that JSX is actually inspired from this thing known as template literals of JavaScript to include, to write syntax, to be more precise, to write syntax. Achha, what's the thing called fired using these methods when you logged React DOM in the console? Called, do not worry about that thing. We'll see about that thing later in the session. So yes, where let's say, yes, now let's try to understand or write our code a bit more complex. Let's say we have this one thing. Let's say let's try to understand or include multiple components. Include multiple components. Include, how do we include multiple components? Okay, fine. Let's try to see how can we include multiple components in just one simple React code. Let's say I can make changes to my React code where I'll say that what else? Let's try to understand this props itself. Props. Let's try to understand what are meant by props. So props are nothing but, let's say if I am giving name, so it is actually something, some value to be known as NxtWave. NxtWave, it's kind of number. Day is another thing, which is actually the value of 2. So as we know, in this given HTML format, this name and day are nothing but the properties or the attributes of this given element hello. So these attributes are actually known as props, which are nothing but we can actually get these things in this given function, where I can say that I'll say props, I'll remove this variable, JavaScript variable, and from this given props, I'll say let name comma age is actually equals to this thing known as props, and I'm going to include this name and age, which is nothing but, here I'll say day, not age, but it is day. It is a day and name. Even if you observe this particular code, you'll see this date is same. Let's say props are nothing but the properties or attributes where we send the data. We send the data, like if I say this value as 3, if I change the value as 3, you can clearly see this is updated to 3, value 3. If I say this value to be 2, see this value is still updated to 2. This value is still updated to the value of 2, which is nothing but, for any given component, for every given component, props are nothing but a kind of a properties or attributes that we can pass a data into this component itself. So in this given component, if you observe, this hello is one such a component where this accepting, or I can say to be more precise, props. When we send the properties, when we send the props, or when we send the properties or attributes with values, for any given component, the React or the component in React receive all of them in object format. This is the standard thing. But why? As to gather all of the attributes for a component, React follows JSON notation. So JSON notation is about JavaScript object notation. So people, if you want to have any kind of a doubt what is meant by JSON notation, you can just search it in the Google, or you can search it in Google or ask ChatGPT. It will give you what is meant by JSON. So where, let's say, if this in this given above example, we actually pass name and day as properties for this given particular hello component, for which these will be stored in this given format, where the properties, I'll say object, where I'll say, let object that is actually equals to this particular thing, an object where it has wait a minute, the name property as NxtWave and the day property as 2. Now when we are actually sending these two of the properties for this given component itself, they actually send like this. The React actually send like they actually create a object, and inside the object they actually place these two parameters, and send this entire object to this particular component itself. So instead of calling this props, we can say that even it is actually called as object or obj, everything is fine. So this is actually known as object. Where this entire code actually works entirely properly. So but this object has one such a name where actually known as props. Where at this given particular line destructuring happens, which is nothing but at this given point of time, where on the left hand side we have this let name comma day, and on the right hand side we have the properties with this name is actually equals to the value of NxtWave and day is actually equal to the value of 2. Now here the destructuring actually happens, where this name variable, or I think say name prop value, this given prop value will actually be in match, so that this NxtWave will be assigned to this property name, so that here name on the left hand side will get this value of NxtWave. Similarly, we have this thing known as the day, this particular key value pair day is equal to 2. This day is actually resembling this left hand thing, where according to the destructuring thing in the JavaScript, this given value will now be added to this given particular day itself. So day is actually equal to the value of 2. Now this name is equal to NxtWave and day is equal to 2 are being replaced at these in this given particular JSX format, itself. So that's how the props actually work. So whatever thing that we are sending here will be actually taken care by the component, and the destructuring actually happens, and then it will be included in the JavaScript code itself, in the HTML return code itself. So Till this point, anyone has kind of any doubt, because it's very important to understand the props itself. If you don't understand, I'll take extra time to explain this stuff. Anyone have any kind of a doubt? No, Rock Jitin. We'll only cover this particular thing known as um, React.js, no Next.js. Okay, small summary. Okay. So in HTML, let's say we have this div element where it has property or an attribute known as ID with value of root, right? Similarly, for the components that we have created here, for the components that we have created in the React itself, we can name our own properties. Our own properties we can name. Instead of name, I can give n1 any kind of a thing, right? So for these given two properties, name and day, these are the two properties that are actually uh, created by our own, by as a developer. I've just created these two properties there in the itself. Now I'm sending these two properties, for this given component. But how the React actually send both of these two properties, that it follows this one particular thing known as object JSON notation, where these two properties will be converted and kept in one single object, like in this given example. Our entire these two objects will be, these two properties will be kept inside this object known as this particular thing. Now this object is actually being sent to our given component itself, where we receive it using the name of props. So here I destructure these things with the name and day. So here the name already has, our property name has the same thing, and I'm actually assigning this same value to this name on the left hand side, assigning the day value to this particular day property value on this left hand side, and I'm actually figuring out or replacing these two values by the end of this destructuring and applying these two things here. So if you have any kind of a doubt in destructuring assignment, how the destructuring actually happens in JavaScript, you can check a small YouTube video. You'll get an idea about it. That's what it is. That's what the props actually behave in this kind of fashion. So anyone, any kind of doubt? No doubts. Can I go ahead? If I can go ahead, tell me go ahead. I'll go ahead. And one important thing I just want to ask you: are you able to understand my pace? Am I going too fast? Tell me. If I'm going too fast, I'll just reduce my pace. Yes, go ahead. Fine. So this is about the props and how they actually work for any given component. Now, what is this advantage of the React is that we can actually, in this given particular code, you only see this particular thing. Okay, name, remove this day kind of a thing. Let's write this hard coded value. So I'll only pass this, hello element. So if I want to pass, I'm currently passing one component where it is actually rendering this one simple thing. Welcome to this day 2 or second day of sprint by NxtWave. If I want to pass multiple components, like this multiple components, how can I do that? How can I do that one simple thing? Right? Where, yes, let's try to do it. Where I'll say I'll create one single another component where I'll say it as hello parent. This is another component, the JavaScript function, where it returns some HTML code, where it returns another div element, where it says hello, and I'll say I'll pass this name attribute. I'll say NxtWave. Similarly, I'll be sending this entire thing multiple times. Instead of telling NxtWave, I'll say by Nitin. So in the next line, I'll say I'll pass the name to be, uh, you know, intensive batch, intensive batch. So intensive batch of NxtWave. So where instead of passing this one single hello element, hello component, I'll pass this one component, hello parent itself. Hello parent itself. So where this given particular hello parent element is actually calling this hello component, where this hello parent has multiple hellos. Now if you go and observe the screen, we have this particular thing. Yes, we have these three components where we are doing this one important thing. One important thing is where this one single individual component, or I can tell you this with this given simple thing. So I'll tell you that in React we are trying to break a large component into small chunks, into smaller chunks. It will be more fun, smaller chunks, and passing them into the component or into the bigger component, or we can say that instead of passing them and rendering them, I can say using one single large component, which is nothing but, I'll tell you the difference between large component and small component, where large component has many smaller chunks, but the chunk itself is generating or returning HTML code. Is returning the HTML code, and we have these smaller chunks a lot in the larger component. So the advantage of doing this or following this one single process is that we actually try to do one single thing, which is nothing but break this entire large component into smaller component and pass this smaller component, for this, into this larger component, and just show the larger component in the front. But behind this larger component, we have all the smaller components working together to support this entire large component. So this gives us more power on UI or on the problem that we are solving. So we can optimize, we can actually increase the performance, and also we can have a more control over these, smaller chunks instead of having on the larger, part of the component itself. That's the advantage of doing this thing, and React actually performs this kind of things. That's where we have one single large component hello parent, where this large component has three small components, and they are having their own particular props, and it is actually sent as an object to this particular, this thing, and it has been destructured and being utilized in this given particular HTML code that it is actually returning. So this is the process of chaining that actually happens in React. This is the standard process that I just want to mention even before going to build the project itself, because these are the standard practices that are actually applied in the React. That's why the React has been created, and these are the standard practice that we imply in the code itself. So at this given point of time, anyone have any kind of a doubt? Anyone, at this given till point of the time, if anyone have any kind of a doubt, I'll explain it. Because these are the fundamental, the basic thing when you're actually working with the React. If you are not getting the things at this given point of time, tell me, I'll re-explain the things. Or else I'll share this particular video to my team, so, or my team will actually will share this particular recording of this particular thing, so everything would be doing well. So if you have any doubt, you can ask me, otherwise you can tell me, say we can go ahead, we'll go ahead. Finally, we have one thing that we need to discuss. After that, we are done. We are done with the session, today's session. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead. Yeah. So we have seen how the props actually been sent to any given particular to any given component, why it is giving as an object form, and also we have seen how we can create these larger components and use this one single larger components here itself. So that one we have already seen, and now let's try to see how can we actually render a list, altogether. So how can we do that? A list of items that we want to render onto the screen. So for that, I'll create one thing, another index.html. I'll say list.html, where we have this particular thing, where we have this document rendering list, mm, where let's try to get all the things, details, I mean all the links that we have here that are pasted inside this given particular thing. Instead, I'll do this thing. I'll say this.html, below it, paste it. This.html, go to it, paste it. So we also have this script tag where its type is actually text comma babel. Inside this given text, this is actually JavaScript code that we need to write. So let's write a simple component function lists. It's a function list. So list is one such a component where I'll say return a div element stickers. I'll just tell this one thing where I'll say react dom dot render maximum render, and I'll say the first component I just want to pass is this list, and after that I'll say document dot get element by id, this one thing known as root. I'll check this thing whether this code is actually working or not. So So let's try to end this previous thing. This thing. So this item is um, okay. Let's try to improve this thing here. Yes, we can clearly see that this list item is actually is one such a component where we have created, it is returning some HTML code, and we are actually rendering it onto the screen using this render method that is given by the React DOM onto the screen into this given particular element with the ID root. So which is nothing but this inside this given particular element, we are actually rendering this particular entire, this component list altogether itself. Now let's consider this one single example where we have um, let stationery. We have an array where it is actually having pen, pencil, it have eraser, it have rule. Now in order to render all of these things, all of these four things that are actually present inside this given particular array, we'll see how can we do it. Is that, let's say, the basic idea that we need to render each of them is that I'll write my basic idea to render all elements in array is create a loop over on each item in array or in above array, and then when you are actually pointing in one array or pointing on one simple thing or one element in array, pass them into the component to render onto the screen. So to enable this particular thing of list item thing, to enable this particular looping kind of thing, let's try to first write this one given loop. Let's say for, I'll say not inside this thing, we'll write outside of it. Let's say for, oh sorry, I is actually equals to the value of 0, I less than this stationery dot length. Remember, length is a parameter, not a function in JavaScript. In Python we'll say length of, whenever there is an array, if to find this length, we'll say len of. Len, there it is actually a function, but here length is actually a property for this given array stationery. For any given array, length is actually a property, not a method itself. I'll say I plus plus. Inside this particular thing, I'll say let item is actually equals to, so stationery dot of I, and I'll say const list item is actually equals to this thing known as li, where at this given point of time, if this particular item, I'll say item, instead of telling it as item, I'll paste it as item, where I am here when array is pointing out one single element in this given particular stationery at this given point of time, I am actually creating a HTML element and including that particular item element inside of this given HTML element li. When array is pointing to something, or I can say array is pointing to element, then I am including that element that same element into HTML as above, into this HTML as above. After doing this particular thing, I'll say whenever this li element has been, or HTML element has been created, then I'll push this, different HTML elements onto one array, which is nothing but I'll create one array outside of it. Let this li array, right? Li item arr. I'll create one empty array where this particular list item array will consist of all these, items that have been created during this for loop itself. So for that, I'll say simply li item array dot push. We'll say this li item. So this is the basic ideology, that for this given array I have these 3 elements or these 4 elements. I'll loop on this array, go to each element, go to each and every element that is present inside this array, and whenever at given point of time I am pointing out to the single element in this given array, I'll convert it to I'll create a new li element, HTML element for that given particular item, and I will store this particular HTML elements with this given respect to items inside this an empty array known as this particular thing known as li item array. So these are the things that I'll do, where after figuring out, or after this loop entirely got created and this entire li item has been created, then I just render this same li item which I have seen here. I'll render the same item here in this given example. I'll say ul, and in between I'll include this one thing known as this li item arrays. To be more precise, I'll try to change li item array items array. Item array items array. Items array. Now let's check whether this thing actually is getting included or not. So check it. Run the code. Is there anything that I missed? Go to this console. Okay, I is not defined. Sorry. Here I should be saying let I. So, yes. These are the warnings. So there is this one important key prop. So do not worry about what is meant by key prop at this point of time. But see, now with this one simple thing, where we have rendered our entire list of items in the given array onto the screen using the for loop, I think I'll zoom it out a bit. Yes, using this simple for loop logic which we have written till this point, we have used this single for loop thing to push elements onto the screen, and we are actually seeing them on the screen itself. So this is the one important thing that we have observed this thing. But apart from that, whenever we want to include these array elements onto the screen in JavaScript, we in React we actually follow this one method where we use this random, where we use this thing instead of using this particular entire the thing of the given particular encountering this particular thing. Oh, sorry. I need to make it comment. So instead of doing this, we're going to each loop, running a loop and getting each element out of that array, creating a HTML element out of that single elements, and pushing them out to get one array, and getting that entire array and coming there into this component and rendering them onto the screen. It's a very tedious process. The simple thing we can do is that I'll simply say ul. We have our stationary we have our stationary array. Here, okay, into this is actually a component, right? So this is actually an, I'm actually including the stationary, which is actually a JavaScript array. So where I'll say I use map function, where I'll tell this item, where I simply say that return li item. So map is one such a function where it reduces all of this component, all of this unnecessary stuff. All of this unnecessary stuff will actually be reduced. Writing the for loop, the basic idea have a lot of disadvantage, because let's say in this given stationary array we have 4 elements. Assume we have thousands of elements. Then this array should run for 1,000 times. Then it's actually a tough thing to just showcase it or render it on the screen itself. Instead, we can simply using this one simple thing known as a map function, where this given array we are applying this map function where this item iterates through all of the elements that are actually present inside this stationary and will create these elements. Once this element is created at this given one instance, it will be generated and given to this particular thing. Again, go to the next element, generate this list item element, give to this unordered list. So this is the kind of thing that work actually happens. Even if I reload it, you'll see that this entire thing has got or successfully been rendered onto the screen. So this is how we actually render a given list onto this given screen. So till this point, anyone has any kind of a doubt? Till this point, anyone has any kind of a doubt? Till this, anyone have any kind of a doubt? Clear? Clear. Clear. Okay. Okay. Mm, let's say now. Now let's try to see what we have only seen this particular thing known as a React DOM, how we are rendering and how we are actually manipulating this thing, creating component, JSX props and other stuff. Um, let's try to see what is the use of this React. For that, it just take just 15 minutes of explanation. I'll tell you why we don't use this approach and why we use this bundlers and sort of thing. Give me just 2 to 5 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes. I'll just finish it. Okay. I'll create another HTML page. I'll say that sample.html sample.html, where we have this HTML thing, where we have this entire thing, React usage in CDN. So for that, I'll go back to this particular thing, get these 2 things or get these 3 things probably, and I'll go to the sample dot thing and I'll print them. Now we have our React, so we'll first definitely need to create this particular element with ID root. This is mandatory. Without this, there is no possibility of single page application. This is very mandatory because React tries to create a single page application without this given particular single statement. It's not possible. React doesn't work. So for that, I'll say, instead of creating this thing, okay, I'll create index.js, where I'll link this sample.html using the script tag. I'll create this source. Go to this index.js. Where in this index.js, let's try to see console.log, or I'll say um, console.log react. So go ahead, try to stop the code. Run the code, you don't see any kind of thing, so it's go server. It's now okay. Now the sample.react. Go live. Yes, we have our empty page where React usage CDN. Wait. So yeah, go to your index.js. I'll remove all the files except these two files. I'll remove all the files. Yeah, go here. Now we got our console.thing. So let's say the server, okay, object. Whenever we are saying that we are console logging this React, we have this output as these kind of a thing, where it has create element. Even React is actually sending us this create element where it has type, props and child. So this create element is one such a method that is given by the React itself, where it has a type, props and children. Let's try to use how we can use this particular React element, where I'll say that first we'll say const parent is actually, I'll say that React dot create element div element, where we have this one thing known as the property, where wait a minute, this the div element that I want to create is, I am mentioning as a div element. Inside that I just want to give what are the attributes that this particular div element should have. I'll say ID of parent, and after that we'll say what are the content that I just want to include it. I just want to say welcome to React. Now, let's check it. After creating it, we need to render it. So how do we render? As we go again, we'll say const root element, where I'll say React DOM dot create, root, CREATE, create root. So this document dot query, get element by ID, known as root. Once we get this particular get element by ID root, I'll say root dot render this coming parent. This is parent. I'm actually rendering the root, so before I need to remove this space, where if you see on this given screen, we actually rendered this welcome to this particular React thing, where it is actually present inside this div element, where instead of div element, I'll say it is of h1 element. Now see, yes. So we have created one h1 element, and the ID that we are giving for this given h1 element is parent, and the content that should be present inside this given particular h1 element should be welcome to the React. And I'm creating a React element itself. I'm actually using React to create the element h1 with this given ID with this given content, and I'm storing in this given variable parent itself, JavaScript variable parent. Now I'm actually rendering this parent element in the root element itself. So where if you observe this particular F12, go to this thing where this div ID root has one ID element, one h1 element with this ID of parent and this content of welcome to the React. So with this we have created, using the React, we have created one component, and with the use of React DOM we rendered successfully onto the screen. Let's say in this given root or div root, I have another div Inside that we have h1, which is nothing but, instead of having this particular thing as React, I'll say um, yes, I'll say this one single thing. I'll say React dot create element. I'll say first this above element. Wait, this given above element is not h1, it is a div element. Inside this div element, I am actually creating another div element where its id is actually equals to the value of child, and inside it we are actually React dot create element. We are actually using our h1 element. Let's say if I want to have this class, I'll say class to be known as heading, and after this I'll give the value of welcome to the React. Now let's see, the content is actually rendering on the screen, but if you observe this particular div element where it has another element, div element of root has another div, and inside that we have another div child, and inside that we have our h1 element. So where this React create element, this React dot create element helps us to create elements where the first element gives type of element we need to create. Dev, div, h1, h2, paragraph, any other thing. Second thing is attributes for that app, or properties or attributes for that element we need to be mentioning as second argument, and the third argument it is content to be present inside the created element. So these are the two things that actually happen. So React dot create element actually create these three things. So in order to just create a div inside a h1, which is nothing but, if I simply go to the HTML, if I simply say inside of this root element I have one div element, inside that we have another div element, inside that we have one h1 element, welcome. So to create these kind of structures, we are actually writing these kind of a logic. Assume when you want to create a dynamic website, like go to this particular thing known as Amazon. Let's say if you want to convert this Amazon entirely into this React page, if I click on this thing known as inspect, see, observe this particular thing, a div, inside this big div, and inside this particular div we have wait a minute we have another div or another script element with no script element and sort of a thing. Okay, inside we have another script element where the script element has some JavaScript code itself, where inside has JavaScript code, and it has some JavaScript code where inside this form element we have another form element with the input element, with the script element we have another some code of JavaScript code itself. Now imagine if you want to create these kind of a complex website and start writing this React in this given particular way, it is actually a tedious way of doing it. That's why React gave us bundlers, which take care all the above things. We simply want to write the components, that's it, don't do anything, we are done. This entire upskilling, this entire hard work will be taken care by the React itself. We need to simply write the component as we have seen previously, and we simply do the calculation that we want to do. That's it. Not worry much more than that. This entire thing, this React create app, inside of it, will be taken care by the React. That though you don't need to worry. So React use bundlers which take this above hard work and convert our work of developers much easier. So we use this particular thing known as create React app, or this thing npx create React app is one such a bundler, where white is another bundler, where in this given particular React, we'll see this white. To create any other React project, we'll use this given particular thing known as a white bundler, where these bundlers are helpful to do this heavy work kind of a thing. So that is the use of React. And by the way, we are actually using this CDNs for React and React DOM. In general, we don't use this CDNs. It's very bad thing, because every time we need to make a network call. Every time we need to make a network call whenever we are dealing with this thing known as a React. Whenever we are using React and create React DOM, whenever this entire function or JavaScript file is again reloading by the browser, then there is a function call. There is a network call for these given links. So that's very not good process. It's just very friendly way we kind of a thing. That's why I applied or implemented these kind of bundlers or CDN links in this given thing. So from tomorrow onwards, we'll see how to create a React app using Vite. So that's it for this session. If you have any kind of doubts, you can ask. So here in this given list, where we have an array with these 4 items. So if I want these 4 items to be appearing on the screen, I should be writing a simple loop, and I'll be creating each HTML element when the loop iteration actually point out this given element in this array, and I'll send all of these created HTML element into an array of list items array. Finally, I'll easily include that list items array onto this particular HTML element, where the destructuring is taken care by the browser itself. Instead of writing this entire loop, we can simply write this one simple map function on this given array, where there and then itself will be created and will be pushed onto this screen itself. That's why I've used map. That's what meant by functions or listing of functions on the screen itself. And yes, Pawan Kumar, you should have watched yesterday's session, so I have clearly told how to handle a state in JavaScript directly. So one important thing I just want to ask everything, please actually fill this given particular form, where it helps me to give the feedback. Please give the feedback, honest feedback. If you like the session, tell me if you like the session. If you want me to change anything, I'll tell tomorrow, Shivashankar. I'll tell tomorrow, Shivashankar. So please fill this feedback form now itself, because it is very helpful for me to give better teaching experience for you. So that's why I urge everyone, please fill this given form. It just take 1 minute of your time. So I've spent around at least half day to prepare entire this given content. So just spare 2 minutes for me and fill this feedback form and tell me your feedback. Take your feedback very honestly. Even if you don't like the session, mention it. No problem. If you don't like the session, even so, mention it in the feedback form. If you like the session, actually please mention or give a feedback, such that it will be very helpful for me to deliver better teaching tomorrow onwards. This is the link. I'm forwarding it again. Both the links are same. So you can figure out or submit a form or feedback either way. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll say remove. Yeah, this is the feedback form. Feedback form. This is the feedback form. Just please fill the feedback. Please spare 2 minutes and fill the feedback. If you have any doubts, please revert back to my team. They'll help you to solve the doubts. So until then, bye bye. Have a good night, sweet dreams, and we'll meet tomorrow.